Well, rarely do Eric and I come back for a second show, but there was just a small, minor adjustment to NFL news yesterday that happened shortly after we went ahead and did our prediction show. By the way, I thought it was hilarious. Someone commented, "Eric and Anthony picked the Colts to win the Super Bowl. Luck retires the next day." It was really the same day. Pretty hilarious.
Yeah.
So, excuse me. Welcome to Total Football Talk. I'm Anthony.
And I'm Eric.
And we got a lot to say. So, you ever heard of the butterfly effect, Eric?
Of course I have.
So, to me, it's really funny how the butterfly effect comes into play. So, I had the Bengals going 12-4, right? And I had the Bengals having home field advantage throughout. And we had the Colts. I had the Colts as the 2 seed, but still going to the Super Bowl. You had Indy doing this crazy gauntlet run going to the Super Bowl. But for me, everything changes now. Kansas City gets that win over Indy, which makes them 12-4. And instead of the 3 seed, they're now the 1 seed, right? And then Cincinnati loses to Jacksonville because now the Jaguars are playing a little bit better and above themselves a little bit. And, they're going to have a better record going into their situation and be in the playoff picture. And I think that they can knock Cincinnati off even though the Bengals are at home. I don't think the Bengals will go 8-0 at home this year, but I think they're going to make strides to go that direction. So now Cincinnati drops to the 3 seed, right? Houston elevates to the 2 seed. So my whole playoff picture got thrown out of whack. So I'm just going to go over the South and my modifications for it really quick, and then we'll address the retirement. So with Luck retiring, what does that mean for the Colts? Well, according to my predictions, as Cynthia Freeland would say, and this is just the eye test, right? That's all this is. So with the modification now is this. As you can see on the board, I'm going to bring it up to the thing. With the Indianapolis Colts, you've got Houston is going to end up going 12-4 with a first round bye and a 2 seed. Jacksonville, I think, now elevates themselves to 9-7, 10-6, and they're in the playoff picture. Indy, I think, drops down to 5-11, 6-10. I like Jacoby Brissett. I think they still have talent, but that's a lot to overcome if you're the Colts. I mean, we talked about this. They could be as bad as 4-12. They could be as bad as, they could be as good as 12-4. Well, I got the Colts going 6-10. I want to make something of note here. These 2 teams, the Colts and Titans, in my opinion, they have the best 2 coaches in the AFC South. If they keep these guys for another year, okay, I think you're going to see Tennessee and Indy up here at the top. And the Texans may have Deshaun Watson, but they also have O'Brien. And as long as O'Brien's the coach here, I can't pick Houston to ever go to a Super Bowl, let alone very far in the playoffs. So I'll get to my playoff prediction here in a minute. But here's basically what happens. Jacksonville gets elevated into the playoff picture. Indianapolis drops to 3rd, and Tennessee and Indy are going to be pretty much tight neck and neck at 6-10, 5-11, somewhere around there. Eric, your prediction.
Which is interesting that you say this, because we pretty much have the same South. Although I just have Houston as a 3 seed in the AFC. Jacksonville moves up to the 2 position. And I think Indy can be anywhere between 4 wins and 8 wins. Listen, I'm giving Houston, obviously, the bump in the South because, they play Indianapolis twice. And I don't think Indianapolis' offense, without Andrew Luck, is good enough to beat the Texans once or even twice like they did last year.
Yeah.
I think Houston sweeps that series now. And that's why Indy drops down. And you mentioned in the last show, Jacksonville, beats Indy once. They might beat them twice now. Tennessee might split the season series with them this season as well. But there's other teams on there who keep elevating, like the Saints. They could possibly win that game in New Orleans, which they probably should. But you're also looking at the game where the Colts in Week 8 were hosting Denver. Man, I was picking the Colts to win that game, okay?
Yeah.
But now with Denver, that win right there elevates them to the number 6 seed and the second wild card. So I got Denver getting in the playoffs now instead of obviously dropping Indianapolis out, but everybody else moving up. So my 1 and 2 stay the same, Kansas City and New England, but everything gets moved up. I had Cleveland at and Cleveland at 3 last time. But I think Houston actually plays better and is able to win that division like without any problems. And those wins right there are what's going to elevate them from the 4 seed to the 3 seed. Cleveland drops to 4. I still got Pittsburgh at 5 and Denver at 6.
Okay, so since I did the division first, so your breakdown is the same then. You've got Texans, Jags, Colts, and Titans?
Yes.
Okay. So let's go through your playoff gauntlet then, because things change now. Okay? So you said
things do change. To me, in the AFC, it's a lot harder to predict, but I think all home teams win as far as when playoffs get played. So I have Denver at Houston. Houston beats Denver. I have Pittsburgh at Cleveland. Man, that is going to be one raucous town if Cleveland hosts Pittsburgh in a playoff game. And I'm saying it right here, but Cleveland pulls out the victory. I know they don't have the experience. I know they haven't been in the playoffs in years. And Pittsburgh is such a playoff perennial contender every year, even though they missed it last year. I think you're going to see the changing of the guard. And not only is it the AFC North, but it's the wild card weekend as well. Cleveland beats Pittsburgh in Cleveland, which means Houston goes to New England where, Houston getting this far is a revelation because, their offensive line is very squeaky. And Houston getting this far, post Lamar Miller going down with an ACL tear in the preseason game last night against the Cowboys, that's why they got Duke Johnson. They got Duke Johnson because Cleveland wanted to trade him. Houston was like, hey, I want him. Duke Johnson's going to be a massive beast for the Texans with dump-off passes, screen passes. But it's going to be too little against New England. I have New England beating Houston handily in New England, which means Cleveland goes to Kansas City and their run ends at Kansas City. New England at Kansas City. Kansas City goes to the Super Bowl.
Okay. So I want to say right now, who's the one guy that's been touting Duke Johnson for the last 3 years?
I'm going to go and say, who's that guy from ESPN? Wait, hold on. No, was it CBS? No, Total Football Talk. His name is Anthony Manna, ladies and gentlemen.
Damn right. I think the Texans just got better in the ground game with the injury. I'm calling it right now. He's going to rush for over 1,100 yards. He's going to have over 500 yards receiving, and he's going to have a total of 20 touchdowns plus. I'm telling you, he's finally going to get a chance to be the man in a system where he can be the man. So with that being said, I want to talk about my mix-up. So what does it mean? Who gets in now that the Colts are out? Well, we're very similar, Eric. For me, that's Denver. We talked about Denver being that bubble team. Now Denver's in. They get the bump. My 1 seed becomes Kansas City. My 2 seed remains Cincinnati. My 3 seed is Houston, and my 4 seed is still New England. The Browns and Broncos make the wild card. Now, I think Denver is the 6th seed. So I think Denver goes to New England. All right? Now, I think that's fascinating because in this situation, the one team that's always given New England a hard time has been Denver, and you can go all the way back to the beginning. The Broncos have a defense. Fangio has seen New England, a better version of New England, just last year. I don't know if they play each other. I'd have to go back and look at the schedule, which I'm doing right now. New England. Yeah, they don't play New England at all this year. New England and Denver don't play, so this will be their first meeting. So I think Denver goes into New England and beats New England. I said it all along. I think New England is the weakest AFC playoff team this year. I said last year they were weak, but everybody decided to play 25 yards off the wide receivers. Everybody decided to treat Tom Brady like he was, freaking Daryl LaMonica in his prime, instead of playing him what he was, which was a dump-off, no accuracy down the field passer. And he didn't show that accuracy, but for one game in the entire postseason. And unfortunately for Chief fans, it was against Kansas City. So with that being said, I think Denver goes into New England, and I think they beat New England. And I think they beat them handily, like 24-14, 27-14, 27-13, somewhere around there. Houston is at home against Cleveland. I'm picking the Browns to win. Actually, I take that back. Because of Duke Johnson, I'm picking the Texans to win. Okay? Despite the O'Brien effect, Duke Johnson and the Texans beat Cleveland because you know he's going to have something on his mind for that game. And I think the Browns lose in the wild card game. I think it'll be a fun game. I think it'll be a close game. But I think at the end of the day, it's going to be a Deshaun Watson drive at the end and Duke Johnson over 100 yards rushing. Texans win. So you got the 3 seed advancing, which means they go to Kansas City. You got the 6 seed advancing, which means they go, the 3 seed advancing, which means they go to Cincinnati. You got the 6 seed advancing, which means, what am I talking about? Yeah, they're the 6 seed advancing. So it should be, if it's a 6 seed, let me start over. Okay. Denver's a 6 seed, so they go to Houston because they're the 3 seed. Cleveland goes to New England. This is where playoff experience, Bill Belichick still has something on his mind for Houston. I got to pick New England here. Okay? Shows you the difference between the two teams. I got to pick New England here for 2 simple reasons. One, New England is not going. They are not going to lose to Cleveland because of Belichick's hatred for the Browns organization and what they did to him. So I think New England wins that game. I think it's close. I don't think it's going to be a drive at the end by Tom Brady, but it's probably going to be like Baker Mayfield scores a touchdown with like 2 minutes to go in the game or 1:30 to go in the game, and they kick an onside and don't recover. It's going to be like a rematch of the '94 wild card game between the two, except in New England. So I'll give the Patriots a 21-17 win. Okay, at that point, Denver then goes to Houston. Now the O'Brien effect is in play, and Denver beats Houston. So the 6 seed, which is Denver, goes to the 1 seed, which is Kansas City. New England, which is the 4 seed, goes to Cincinnati. Now, this is where I think the Bengals are going to play smart. I think the Bengals are going to play aggressive. I think the Bengals are going to realize, if they do realize, that Tom Brady is not the same quarterback. Paul Brown Stadium is going to be rocking for its first divisional playoff game since what? 1988. So I think the Bengals win that game. I think it's close. Maybe a missed field goal, maybe a couple of made field goals from long range that one didn't expect, but I think Cincinnati ekes one out. Denver gets walloped by Kansas City in Kansas City. Not because Kansas City is just that much better, but because I think the Chiefs realize once they make the playoffs, I think they're going to turn that switch. And having seen Denver twice already, there's going to be no surprises the third time around. So I think Kansas City wins, which means Cincinnati goes to Kansas City for the AFC Championship game. If this was in Cincinnati, I might say it would be closer, but since it's in Kansas City, I'm going to say the Chiefs win this one 31-20, 31-17, something to that effect. Kansas City goes to the Super Bowl, which means you have the Chiefs against the Bears. It's in a dome. There's lots of speed. It's a tough one to predict because the Chiefs have a better offense than the Bears do, but the Bears have a better defense than Kansas City. I don't know if Denver's going to, or if Chicago is going to run the ball. I said Denver, I meant Chicago. I don't know if the Bears are going to run the ball. If the Bears decide to run the ball, the Bears are going to win the Super Bowl. If the Bears decide they're going to try and be balanced and throw in passes and running situations and try to get cute, they're going to put Trubisky in a bad situation. It's tough to win your first Super Bowl as a starting quarterback and your first Super Bowl, and both these teams are going to have that situation. So somebody's going to come out and go, see, we did what Jared Goff couldn't do. But none of them are going up against Tom Brady in a Super Bowl or Bill Belichick. So with that being said, I'm going to go ahead and say, which would be a great Super Bowl because you talk about having the Bears and Nagy against Reed and that. And I know Reed's never won a Super Bowl, and I know Reed normally chokes in the playoffs. And at this point, we don't have Reed choking in the playoffs, so people might be thinking, yeah, this is going to be Kansas City's year. No, it's not. Andy Reid is going to do Andy Reid things in the Super Bowl, and the Bears are going to benefit. Defense wins championships. New England proved that last year. Chicago beats Kansas City 24-17. That's my prediction.
Can't disagree with anything you said there.
No. But I do think it's going to be interesting to see New England's going to take down an old guard, a newcomer in the playoffs, and then they're going to run into a relatively newcomer for that round of the playoffs and lose the second go around. Again, if I'll say it straight up, it could be New England, Kansas City, like you're predicting. If the Bengals don't play Tom Brady as Tom Brady is currently playing at the level he's currently playing at, if they game plan for Tom Brady circa 2003, they're going to lose. If they game plan for Tom Brady circa 2019, they're going to dominate. So it's really up to the Bengals organization on how they want to follow up with this. But
and just remember, this is all from one guy announcing his retirement.
Isn't it crazy? Isn't it crazy?
It changes the whole landscape of the AFC.
Absolutely, the dynamics of it all changes. Now, I'm still going to hold you to, having me say the Bengals went to the championship game and putting that crap on Twitter and all that stuff.
I'm still holding you to it.
All right, I'm going to stick to it. Now we'll see where the Bengals are at week 8. If by the midway point, we look at Cincinnati and they're 4-4, they would have lost to a lot of teams they should have beaten, including Indianapolis. Then yeah, obviously I'm not going to be a homer and be like, well, I picked the Bengals, so I got to stick with the Bengals. No, that's what midseason changes are for. It's called adjusting as a coach. Again, I still want you guys to comment if you guys want me to kind of talk about how my football team does through the course of this season, this year, with it being our first year in football. But obviously it's not going to be a lot or a long update. It's just going to be a quick little end or beginning segue. All right, let's get into the retirement. All right, Eric, I'll let you start because I've got a lot to say, and maybe I should go because you're kind of the voice of reason. First of all, I want to thank Andrew Luck for 6 fantastic seasons in the NFL and giving us as fans something to appreciate, something to watch, something to behold. I remember when the draft was the year he came out of the draft and it was RG3 or him. The Colts were already going to get Andrew Luck. The question was, were the Rams going to get RG3? And I felt at the time that Andrew Luck was going to be the better quarterback. I thought that RG3 was still going to be a good quarterback. I didn't know how good. Obviously, injuries undercut his career as well. For a man to make this announcement at this time tells me a lot about the individual. It tells me that he really tried everything he could for the organization to get better. There was a lot of people putting pressure on Andrew Luck. Oh, they're going to go to the Super Bowl. Andrew Luck's this, Andrew Luck that. It's all about Andrew Luck. So whatever ailments he's been going through, whatever injuries, and I'm sorry, but he's doing the class thing by saying, he's mentally exhausted and he's stepping down. That's not why he's retiring. There's something physically wrong with Andrew Luck. This isn't speculation. This is fact. What it is, I don't know. And he has every right not to share. And the NFL doesn't need that information. It's Nunya. That's the injury. The injury is a Nunya injury. It's Nunya business. So for Andrew Luck to sit there and go, it's more important for me to step down. I know a lot of people might seem like the timing upsets them, but here's why it doesn't upset me. You had every intention to be that guy. You came back. You did everything you could to get the team to the regular season. There just comes a point in time when the body cannot do it any longer. And the fact that, we'll find out a lot in the next 2 weeks what the Colt fans think, not the fans, but what the Colt players say. If the Colt players come out and they're like, no, man, we support Andrew Luck, it's unfortunate and whatever, it's not them saying the right thing. It's they know what's going on. Remember, they know more than we do, and they will know more than we ever will. This also makes me wonder, it does make me wonder, was Andrew Luck honest with Josh McScandles and Frank Reich about his health? And is that why Josh McScandles stayed in New England while Frank Reich said, no, I can still come and make do with what I got. If we have a year, then we have a year. Because it is odd that somebody would leave after getting the job when your starting quarterback is Andrew Luck. Even if Andrew Luck was going to be out for a year and you've got a 3-year contract, you can negotiate, and I'm sure he did, that our season this year should not be a bearing on my coaching ability, and let's judge me when I have Andrew Luck. So the fact that he left before, right after agreeing, that tells me that there had to be a conversation between Andrew Luck and Josh McScandals and the Colts organization and Josh McScandals about his health. They're not telling anybody else because it is a fraternity and it is a brotherhood, and they don't have to disclose any injuries if the player plays. If the player doesn't play, then they have to disclose an injury. So what do they say? Oh, he has a calf injury. Does anybody really believe he has a calf injury? That a calf injury would keep him out of training camp? That a calf injury would keep him out of 3 preseason games? If you believe that, my God, you're stupid. You're stupid. You're so stupid, you shouldn't be watching the NFL. Because this game does require intelligence that's a little bit larger than that of a politician. And I'm not asking for much when I say that. Because the average politician, basically all they do is sit there and drool out of the mouth and mouth breathe, right? My 5-year-old is more intelligent than a politician. And if you can't be a little bit smarter than a politician, I can't help you. I don't know what to tell you. So obviously it's not a calf injury. Now that brings me to what I'm pissed off about. I'm pissed off at the fans. And I'm going to say it right now, and I don't care if I get ripped for this, okay? But if you were at the Colt game and you booed Andrew Luck for his announcement because you drafted him on your fantasy team, you are the worst kind of fan. You have no knowledge of football. You don't know what you're talking about, and you are the reason why I hate fantasy football. I play it, but I hate it because fantasy football fans know gosh darn nothing about the game. They are the dumbest fans in professional sports, is fantasy football players. They only look at a small molecule of what you're supposed to look for. They have no loyalty to a football team, ever. Oh, my team's out of it, but I'm still rooting for the Packers because I'm a Bears fan because I have Aaron Rodgers. You're not a fan. You're a goddamn joke. You're pathetic, and we don't need you. I understand it's a moneymaker for the NFL, but you are judged by the company you keep, NFL. And the fact that you've promoted this, you've legalized this has ruined the game of football. It has ruined players' careers because you have GMs that operate under the fantasy football model and go, well, we got to make sure we get guys so people get our guy for fantasy, so we get recognition, so we get more money, so we get more airtime, so we get more this, so we get more that. And then when a guy has a down year like Jared Goff, you jump all over him, you flush him down the toilet after 7 friggin' games, and guys like Troy Aikman would never have existed. Troy Aikman in 1991 was a 500 quarterback, and the opposite guy, the guy on the bench, led him to 6 straight wins into the divisional playoff game. He was a better quarterback than Troy Aikman in 91. But the Cowboys didn't give up on him. Why? Fantasy football wasn't a deal. It was around, but it was obscure. The fans that followed the game knew that those fans were pathetic and not worth their breath. Now they've overtaken the sport. And we see guys who have a down year and they go, he's garbage, he's bust, he's this. And these guys end up having pretty good careers and no one notices. And guys like Duke Johnson, who pop every time they're on the field, don't get recognized by you people. Well, he's not a starter. He doesn't get the carries. I need touches. I need yards per carry. You need a life is what you need. You're a loser. Watch the game and enjoy it. See the talent on the field. Everyone's bitching about the Super Bowl. It was one of the best damn Super Bowls in a long time if you actually watch it from a football standpoint. Great defense, great hits, timely deflections, pressure on the quarterback in key situations, great stops in the run, jumping jukes in the hole to get a couple extra yards to keep the chains moving. Sonny Michel played amazing. The offensive line for New England did just enough. That was a great example of defense. Super Bowl IX was 16-6. 16-6. It was widely considered one of the better Super Bowls in the first 10 because it was a defensive gem and the two teams that got there hanging their hat on defense put it on display. Why? Because fans appreciated football. They didn't appreciate fantasy numbers. So I'm sorry. If you're a Colt fan and you booed Andrew Luck last night, you should be ashamed of yourself. And I'm not even going to call you a Colts fan because you're an embarrassment to the sport. Fantasy football is a joke. It is not true football. A purist, I mean, how many guys do you see hosting fantasy football shows that you know, just looking at them, they've never stepped on a football field a day in their life, let alone watch the game outside of numbers? Yeah, probably most of them. And for those of you sitting at home going, well, I play fantasy football, so do I. My question for you is, which type of fantasy player are you? Do you play it so you can have a good time with your buddies, give them a hard time, win money because you think you know guys better than they do? Or are you one of these number-pushing douchebags that go to Vegas and go, oh, this guy, and he's got to have, this guy had this many carries last year for this many yards, and you're an idiot. You're an absolute moron. I don't know what to tell you. Like, there's two types of fantasy players. There's the football purist, and there's the fantasy football expert. Or in some cases, let me rephrase that, because I think you're considered an expert, Eric, but a fantasy football purist, where all you care about is the fantasy numbers and the different leagues and the way you draft and who you draft and what team they're on and who, you know, are they a three down back? Are they a 2 down back? Those are the people that booed Andrew Luck. The man did not make a decision he wanted to make. This was obviously difficult for him. And until I know more information, I'm certainly not going to boo the man. Now, again, I play fantasy football. Eric plays fantasy football. I have no issue with you if you play fantasy football. I have an issue with you if that's the only way you watch football. If that's the only way you carry yourself in the postseason. Oh, I got to play fantasy football, otherwise it's just boring. Because then I got to listen to you in the Super Bowl bitch and complain about a 13-3 game that it was actually pretty good. Was it one of the best games of all time? No, I'm not delusional. But was there certain things that a football purist could really appreciate watching the game? Absolutely. And the people that bitch the loudest about the incomplete pass and the pass interference were Saint fans and fantasy football players. Because they even have fantasy football for the Super Bowl. And the idea of having Drew Brees as your quarterback in fantasy football meant you had a better chance to win money. It's as simple as that. Gambling has overtaken the game. And this is why gambling should never be legalized in sports. Because it overcomes the announcers. It overcomes those that cover, those that cover the game through the course of the week. It overtakes the fans. It overtakes ownership. And people start to succumb to the pressure of what the money wants them to do rather than what common sense tells them to do. I hate gambling in America. It's a disease, a lot like alcoholism. Because a lot of people, they can't handle their drink and they can't handle their gambling. I gamble every year. I play fantasy football every year, and it's a good pot. It's what, $200, Eric?
More than that, over 300.
Over 300. So that's my allotment for the year. And I do one league. I don't do 75. You don't think you have a gambling problem? How many leagues are you in over $100? Do you do fantasy football in the playoffs? Can you watch football without betting? If the answer to that question is no, then you do have a problem. But, this is America, and nobody can tell you what to do, and nobody likes to be told that they have a problem when they have a problem. And I'm sure I'm going to have comments up the galore telling me how bad of a person I am and how I don't know what I'm talking about and how this is the way football is today. And if I can't accept it, then screw off, Anthony, because you don't know what you're talking about, because I'm an idiot and you're brilliant because I have a different opinion than you. I'm not saying you're an idiot. I'm saying you have a problem. And I'm saying you're not a real fan. And I'm saying those people aren't real fans. Just one humble man's opinion. Take it, leave it. I'm putting it out there because I'm done with it. When I heard that the fans booed Andrew Luck, I lost my chocolates. And I got people telling me, well, you got to understand the fans' perspective. No, I don't. If you're upset about ticket prices, Eric, then you boo the ownership. You boo the company. You don't boo the player that gave his blood, sweat, and tears for you for 6 years. It's not Andrew Luck's fault the ticket price is raised. It's not Andrew Luck's fault that hot dogs are $75.28. It's not Andrew Luck's fault that beer costs $19 per glass and that souvenir cups are $135 and jerseys are $1,000. I'm obviously exaggerating, but it's not his fault. You got a problem with that.
Hold on with that. Okay, so we're talking about a player of Andrew Luck's caliber who signed a big contract extension a few years ago. So, of course, when he signs that contract extension and the owner has to pony up that money, who pays for it? Ticket prices, concessions. So yes, it's partially due to the players, but it's also because of the globalization of the sport and how all these owners are billionaires compared to these millionaire players. And yeah, if salaries start to raise, then yes, ticket prices raise.
No, I'll tell you why. I'll tell you why mathematically and economically speaking, you're wrong. Here's the problem: when you up ticket prices, right, you limit who goes to the game. Take a look at the stadiums. Watch Week 1. Look at Indianapolis's football stadium. You tell me how many fans are there, right? You tell me how many fans.
I mean, now you're giving an outlier because Luck's retiring and he won't be there. If you really want to see it, go watch any other home games except the Colts.
Okay,
watch the Redskins.
Fair.
You know the Redskins don't sell out.
Not anymore, and they used to, right? So what I'm saying is, if you lowered ticket prices and made them affordable, okay, I'm not saying you have to lower them to $5 a ticket, but so the average everyday family can attend the game, then you're fine. But I'm sorry, they don't pay for the stadium. They don't pay for renovations for the stadium because all these stadiums are city owned, right? They don't. Well, except for Kroenke, you're right. But right now he's renting, right? You don't, you market your team like the Dallas Cowboys and money's not an issue. There were teams and there were players before there was a salary cap, yeah, you can. Here's the other thing I'll argue, okay? If all the owners basically said, we're not going above this price value, no matter the player, those players wouldn't be asking for that kind of money. You are right in this regard, Eric. The money has to come from somewhere, okay? So I don't mind if you up the prices of the concessions, if you up the prices of merchandise. But I also think that there is a responsibility of the ownership, if you're going to offer these contracts, that you do more to market your football team and get their name out there so people buy your stuff outside of Indianapolis so you can pay for Andrew Luck's salary. By the way, everything that I've read so far says that Andrew Luck is returning the $51 million still owed to him. So the Colts just got a $51 million uptick for next year. So another class act by a class player. I know a lot of people would have just taken the money and ran because it was guaranteed. So you are right. Some prices do have to go up. Basic economics, I agree with you entirely. You're not wrong. But there are things that you can do to offset and make your supply meet your demand. Because right now, an NFL game is not for a family of 4. It just isn't. It's for an elitist. It's for the rich. It's for the politicians. It's for a single guy who has a decent paying job. It's not for families. Unless they want to save up. It's like a family vacation is how much it costs sometimes, depending on the stadium you go to. So, but affordability is an issue with all these big contracts. So that's something else that irritates me about the fans. They complain about prices, right? But then they complain about the player salaries. They just like to complain. I mean, pick a hill to die on, right? If you've got an issue with the player salaries, then understand basic economics and that's going to affect what you purchase. If you want talented players,
don't buy his jersey, don't buy the merchandise, don't watch on TV. The best thing that you can do is not give money to that organization.
Right. But then you can't complain when your team doesn't win because they can't go out and get the big name players. I'm worried that the NFL, here's what I'm upset about with contracts. It's America, man. Make the money you want to make. My concern is you've got a lot of NFL organizations that are starting to make this move towards NBA money. And we saw what happened in the NBA. If you want to tell me there's parity in the NBA, I will slap you in the mouth for being so stupid. There is zero parity in the NBA. Zero. So is that really where we want to go with this? I think honestly, all of this sets up really, really well for the XFL because I don't think the NFL is going to stop making these errors. And I know fantasy football players will be in the XFL. Let's not be stupid, fantasy football fans and whatnot. But I just hope it doesn't overtake the XFL like it did the NFL. Anyway, that's my rant. I know a lot of you probably don't agree with me. Eric, take it away.
Yeah, well, the whole thing with luck, I got the alert on my phone, and I was like, holy crap, and you're the first person I thought about. I was like, I got to call Anthony because, we talk football, and the only reason why my wife knew sooner was because I read it out loud. Holy cow, Andrew Luck's retiring, and then I was like, dialing Anthony. So my first thought was, wow, and I can't believe this is happening. Like, we've seen players retire early. We really don't bat an eye. But when it comes to the stature of Andrew Luck, a quarterback, for example, especially a quarterback, we've seen Barry Sanders retire early. We've seen Calvin Johnson retire early. We've seen Patrick Willis retire early. Gronk retired as well at 29 years old, but sorry, he was a shell of his former self. I can't say the same for all the others. So I think Gronkowski's in a different is in a different
category. Yeah.
But Andrew Luck retiring. Now we saw what happened with the Colts back in 17. Listen, this wasn't all right. This doesn't stem. Oh, let me rephrase what I'm about to say. We remember in 2017 when Luck had his shoulder injured. His decision didn't come based on what happened in March or April when he injured his calf or his ankle or whatever his injury was. I'm not saying he didn't have an injury. I think something happened to where he got injured and he just couldn't recuperate the way he wanted to. This stems from when he got injured in 2000, at the end of either 2014 or early 2015 with a shoulder. He played 15 with a shoulder injury, played 16 with a shoulder injury, had surgery, missed all of 17, came back, became the comeback player of the year last year, and was phenomenal. Big things were expected of the Colts this year. Then he gets injured in March or April in OTAs, doing who knows what. But apparently it didn't heal. And with his train of thought saying, you know what, I've been through this before with the shoulder. It just didn't work for me. And I finally got healthy after all that time. He's mentally drained. Like, you can't really, unless you're ever in that position where you've been injured like he has, and you do the rehab, and you come back and you play the games. Like, you don't know what train of thought is. That's why I've reserved a lot of what I wanted to say because I was in shock. And it's not even my team, for Christ's sake.
Yeah.
I'm not a Colts fan. The Colts beat my Bears in the Super Bowl 13 years ago, so I've never liked the Colts, okay, for that big reason alone. However, Luck was such a stand-up guy. Listen, he went to Stanford. He's got a freaking degree. He went back to school to finish his degree. Like, you'll never hear me say, "Oh, he made a big mistake. He could have got paid sooner." Justin Herbert, Oregon, did the same thing last year. He's going to be one of the highest, one of the best quarterbacks in college this year for Oregon. He went back to school. And I'm not comparing Herbert and Luck, but in a way I am because of their decision to go back to school. Like, you have a degree from Stanford, bro. Like, you can use that degree with however you want now. But the mentality that he had, he even said he didn't love the game anymore. In order to be happy and focus on him, he had to step away from football. Like, we've heard that before. Barry Sanders. Okay? Yeah. Barry Sanders was like, I love football, but, and it was a little different than why he retired, and Calvin Johnson, too. Calvin Johnson could still play. Barry Sanders could probably still play right now. But, they didn't like the direction the Lions were going. This had nothing to do with the direction of the Colts were going. Their arrow was pointed straight up. This had everything to do with luck. And to say, and the one thing that really irks me with what happened last night is that somebody from the Colts organization sent a message to Adam Schefter saying, hey, Andrew Luck is retiring. So Luck wanted to tell his teammates after the game against the Bears, the preseason game, week 3. Then he was going to hold a press conference on Sunday, today, around 3 o'clock Eastern time, and announce to everybody how he wanted to. And it was interesting because I'm watching the game. I get the alert. I'm like, what's he doing on the sideline? Like, why is he on the sideline? Why is he there? And I know he's probably supporting his teammates, talking up some of his teammates, talking to T.Y., Jacoby, and whatnot. And I'm thinking to myself the whole time while I did it. Then I realized he doesn't know. People are looking at their phones like, oh, crap, Luck's retiring. So that's why you get the myriad of boos there. But from a fan perspective, you have no clue. You're just mad at the decision, not the man himself, because you're 2 weeks away from opening day. And I really believe that's true until I hear from a Colts fan that says that it's not true, but I don't think you'll hear that because they all might be checking themselves in the mirror this morning. But I think whoever leaked the news, that person should be called out. I don't want to hear, oh, source told me Andrew Luck's retired. I want to know who it was.
Yeah, that person should be fired.
If it was Ballard, if it was Irsay, I'm telling you, man, if it was Irsay that did it, that is just bad news right there all along. And I'm not saying that Irsay is a saint, because we all know his history. I'm not going to get into it, but that was beyond level. If it came for somebody at the front office.
If it's anybody but the owner, they should be fired. If it's the owner,
absolutely.
If it's the owner, hey, you just got your answer on why Andrew Luck retired. If your owner is that much of a scumbag, how could you be happy with the direction your organization was going? Regardless of what the experts are saying, what people on YouTube are saying, regardless, or maybe a combination of both. Regardless of that.
Let me rephrase that term. The talent on the field was pointing up.
Right. I don't disagree with you.
And the organization obviously goes with it, but when you have people in the organization who are trying to derail that, because they're always going to make all that money anyways, then that's where that becomes the low point.
Well, and I just think to me, it speaks volumes. It speaks volumes for the owner, if it is indeed Irsay that said it. I'm never gonna fault a person for retiring early from a professional sport, because I know how difficult it is to step away from a sport, especially when you're in the NFL or you're in the NBA or you're in the MLB. To get to the highest level, that is the goal of all goals, the be all and the end all and the be all of what you do. Once you get there, you don't walk away unless there's something really, really powerful going on around you. Gale Sayers retired due to injury, but he retired early. Barry Sanders retired early. He was perfectly healthy. You mentioned Calvin Johnson, Patrick Willis. These are people that come to our minds right away. Luck's decision to do it in the preseason. Look, I asked this question to the fans. What could the Colts have done at the quarterback position if Andrew Luck retired before the season started? They weren't going to draft themselves a quarterback.
Well,
if
he would have done this before the draft, they could have altered their draft the way they drafted. I get that. But they started.
Well, wait a minute. Let me just finish this thought. You say that, and there's no doubt they could have. But what would they have given up? Because if you believe you're only one position away from winning a Super Bowl, which many believe the Colts are, and granted that position is a big position, you're not going to then trade everything away to get a quarterback, so then you are multiple pieces away from going to the Super Bowl, but you have a quarterback. Not to mention,
their draft would have ultimately changed because in the draft they went pretty defensive heavy. They had already gotten an offensive lineman for Luck. Maybe it was 1, 2, 3 years too late that they got offensive line help for him finally in Quentin Nelson. when they drafted Nelson, their O-line was getting solidified to being solidified. And they were working on their defense along with Darius Leonard, especially this year.
Which is
Leonard
great.
being in his second year. Yeah.
But
Absolutely.
because
And they were that piece away. However, if he retired before the draft, and then the Colts used a lot of their draft capital to move up and draft a quarterback, whoever that would have been, then they would have had those pieces for their defense.
exactly. And they would have given up pieces to the team they already have established. Now you play the season, you see where you're at, you address free agency, right? I personally think they could still make a trade for AJ McCarron. I know he's in Houston, so trading within your division can be tough, but you offer him a second round pick and a fifth round pick, you'll probably get him. And I think AJ McCarron could step right in right now and get the Colts to the playoffs. I really believe that because he's got the line, he's got the talent around him, and he's not a bad quarterback. Now, does that mean you don't turn around and draft yourself a quarterback next year? No, of course not. If you can go get Tua, if you can go get one of these guys, go get them. Smart money, this is what I would do as a GM, is I would try to make a trade for a guy like AJ McCarron or a quarterback that I felt was capable of being a starter, okay, for the short term, and then try to tell my head coach, do everything you can to get these guys, to win games and get this guy notoriety, try to pump his numbers up a little bit if we're in a blowout, keep throwing, build those numbers, and then at the end of the season, use him as trade bait to move up in the draft. You could trade your first, your third, and your fourth round pick, plus that quarterback to move up into the top 5. Maybe you have to give up a 1 next year. But, that's a lot that you're giving up. But if you're giving all that up to get somebody like Tua or this other quarterback, I can't remember his name that's coming out that everyone's talking about, the top 2 quarterbacks.
Justin Herbert.
There you go. You mentioned him earlier. Then do it because you now have the line that will protect whatever franchise quarterback you go get. So
you remember before Luck came, it was stuck for Luck.
Yeah.
Now you're probably going to see the tank for Tua signs.
Maybe, but the bottom line is you can't do that as an organization.
You can't. No, you cannot.
The Baltimore Ravens won a Super Bowl with Trent friggin' Dilfer. Okay, it can be done. Jacoby Brissett is not a bad quarterback, so if the Colts decide to stay pat, I don't think it's going to hurt them. Well, it might hurt them a little bit because I do think AJ McCarron is a bit better, but that's just based off of talent, not based off of actual game time. So I don't know. As an organization, when you tank on purpose, you risk getting guys injured for the long term. You risk upsetting the locker room, the morale, and then the fans. Okay, you're going to tank for Tua. So are you going to go to the game and watch your team purposely lose and pay $3,000 for a family of 4? Or are you going to sit on your fat rear end at home watching the game? Or are you going to be playing fantasy football going, I don't care about the Colts this year. They suck. I'm going to follow the Patriots because I love Tom Brady. Because that's something a Colt fan should ever say. Sorry, I'm still ranting about fantasy football. I really believe the people that booed last night was the fantasy football crowd. I think the true Colt fans were as shocked and upset and saddened as I was. Did you imagine them booing Barry Sanders when he came out for his friggin' jersey celebration because he retired a year early? And you talk about retiring and the timing sucking, okay? Barry Sanders plays 1 more year, he's the rushing leader of all time. And the Lion fan base will have that forever. But he didn't. I don't see them booing him. So.
Well, we're also in a different age with social media and news coming out a lot quicker and getting to the news fronts a lot quicker than we were back when Barry Sanders retired.
That's true, but that also reminds me of the scumbag formerly known as Adam Schefter. Why that human piece of fecal matter doesn't go grab Andrew Luck since he's at the flipping game. And if he's...
Schefter was not at the game.
Okay.
Schefter was in New York.
Okay, fine. Then...
Well, and here's the thing, you can't obviously you can't have your phones on the sideline. And I was wondering the same thing. But okay, and I get what you're saying regarding Schefter. I get it. However, if he doesn't break it, you're talking about the same person, just a different name.
Okay.
Whether it was Schefter,
I would rather somebody else. I would rather.
Whether it was Jay Glazer.
I would rather. Okay, Eric. I would rather somebody else be the piece of human fecal matter than myself. I can't worry about the bald douchebag that doesn't know football known as Johnny Glazer. That's right. I said it. Okay? I know what his real name is. I call him Johnny Glazer. And if you don't know what that is, please don't look it up. You don't want that on your search history. Okay? I don't care about Ian Rapapapapapapapapapapapapapapapapapapapapapapapapapapapapapapapapapapapapapapapapapapapapapapapapapapapapapapapapapapapapapapapapapapapapapapapapapapapapapapapapapapapapapapapapapapapapapapapapapapapapapapapapapapapapapapapapapapapapapapapapapapapapapapapapapapapapapapapapapapapapapapapapapapapapapapapapapapapapapapapapapapapapapapapapapapapapapapapapapapapapapapapapapapapapapapapapapapapapapapapapapapapapapapapapapapapapapapapapapapapapapapapapapapapapapapapapapapapapapapapapapapapapapapapapapapapapapapapapapapapapapapapapapapapapapapapapapapapapapapapapapapapapapapapapapapapapapapapapapapapapapapapapapapapapapapapapapapapapapapapapapapapapapapapapapapapapapapapapapapapapapapapapapapapapapapapapapapapapapapapapapapapapapapapapapapapapapapapapapapapapapapap honor as a journalist, which doesn't exist anymore. The least you can do is reach out to Luck at the, or, oh, I don't know, fly out to the game on your private jet, New York to Indy. Ain't that long of a flight, depending on when the news broke. Wouldn't you want to be there to talk to Luck anyway? And find out what the frick is going on? Instead of sitting in your New York penthouse, twiddling your thumbs on Twitter? Just saying.
Well, what's the job of a reporter there? I mean, he's doing his job the way it came out, yeah, but it wasn't Schefter who miraculously stumbled upon this news and was like, oh, Andrew wants to retire, might as well tweet it out. It was somebody from the Colts organization who was like, I'm going to, here's this news, and he's like, well, what else am I going to do with it? And they're like, well, send it out then. And I think the timing was bad. It should have been done after the game. Then the people would have left, and they never would have heard the booze. I think it was a setup. I really do.
Well, I know it was, and I'm not excluding the person within the organization that did what they did. But you know what? If every reporter operated under the same ethics, Andrew Luck would have been able to tell his teammates. Andrew Luck would be able to have his press conference. Yeah, the fans would have still booed because somebody would put on Twitter, probably that same douchebag. Okay? But at the very least, you can look in the mirror. Your job as a reporter isn't to report the news first. It's to report the news accurately. I don't need to know just that Andrew Luck is retiring. What's the one question everybody's asking right now? Why? What's going on? What happened? All of those answers we don't get because Adam Slime Scumbag Schefter decided to be the first to report the news. And if it wasn't...
Gotta be one.
Huh?
Somebody's got to be the first.
Again, you can be the first the next day when you have more information. I'm going to read the guy...
What more information do they need other than Andrew Luck is retiring?
Why is he retiring? It's the question everyone's asking right now.
Everybody knows why.
No, they don't.
Luck had his press conference last night.
He said he was mentally tired out, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So he was forced to have the press conference.
He did not want to keep putting in the time the way he was feeling with his rehab. And the injuries were catching up with him mentally and physically. And he wanted to be able to do things after football. Well, now it's after football. And you know what? Andrew Luck is going to ride off in the sunset, and he's going to travel the world with his wife and his family, and he's not going to look back. I mean, a lot of people are thinking, oh, maybe in 2 years he'll want to pitch back in. I don't get that feeling from Luck. I think he's done, and he's just going to go into obscurity and be himself and enjoy the rest of his life.
Why not? Why not? To answer your question, Eric, somebody has to report it. You're not wrong about that, but why does it have to be instantaneous? Why can't you give it a day? Why can't you report it?
You can't because of the age of the social media world that we live in. And I know that's not the right answer, and that's not the answer that you want to hear, and it's not the answer I want to give you, but it's the answer that is 100% truthful right now.
The only way to change the mistakes of the present is to make the difficult decisions that create a better tomorrow. Ben Franklin, 1781. That applies here. I understand what today is. But if we want tomorrow to be different, then we've got to make the difficult decisions to make those changes now. And this is why I'm not on Twitter. This is why I don't go to Tumblr and all these other things that people are on, because whether I know that Andrew Luck retired last night or this morning doesn't affect me. Now, would it affected me if I found out about this Monday? Sure. Would have affected a lot of people's fantasy football teams. And I get that. I understand the need, but his plan was to have it this morning, right? That was the plan.
His plan was to do it around 3 o'clock his local time in a press conference, and to announce to everybody that he was retiring. They could have done it Friday, because apparently there was some talk about doing it Friday. He had figured out about the last week or so, or earlier in the week, like Monday, Tuesday, that he was going to retire. He actually, interesting. Do you know who Peter King is?
Yeah.
Okay, Peter King. I'll read his article, The Monday Morning Quarterback. I think it's called something else, but that's what it was typically referred to as. He had a conversation with Lux 3 weeks ago, which was five weeks before the start of the open of the regular season. And Luck told Peter King, "I have no doubt I'll be ready for week 1." Something changed between when he talked to him and earlier in the week, to where he couldn't do it anymore. And people are allowed to change their mind. It's not like we live in a communist state anymore, or that there's that. Whatever. You know what I'm
I was going to say, we've never lived in a communist state, unless you're in San Francisco. Look, here's the bottom line, okay? I think there's more to it. I think it might be a shoulder residue from the shoulder. I can't believe a calf injury, which is so easy to recover from with just a certain amount of time on the block, unless he tore his quadricep or his calf muscle somehow.
That's what I was thinking.
Yeah. That's a long rehab. And it's thinned, so it never really heals. So for those of you that might be like, well, if he said he was ready for week 1, he might have gotten information from the doctor that they can do surgery and he can let it heal for a year, but that it's always going to be thin and that it's likely to tear again. And if it tears enough times, you will never walk the same again. So again, doctors know more information about injuries than we do. So yeah, calf injury, I'll be ready by week 1. And then you find, because he was probably thinking, I'll get surgery, I'll rest for the preseason, and I'll be ready for week 1. But when the doctor came back and said you can do that, and that's true, but your likelihood of re-injuring it during the year is high, and your likelihood of re-injuring it multiple times in your career is high. And if you re-injure it enough in your career, you won't be able to walk normal again. Andrew Luck's not a dummy. He's got a family that he genuinely cares about. So I think there were some mitigating factors behind that decision. I do want to, if anybody stuck through this whole thing after my fantasy football rant, I want to reiterate, I'm not saying all fantasy football players are the way I described. I am saying those that is the only way they watch football, or the only way they really get enjoyment out of the game. And the only way to know if you're in that category is to not do fantasy football for a year. Or at the very least, do one league. Make it a cheap league. Jim, by the way, is in a fantasy league. He's doing one that's a $5 buy-in. So he's playing this year for the first time in a long time. Right? $5 buy-in, playing it this year just to give it a shot, and that's the end of it. No big deal. And he's doing it with a bunch of work buddies. Totally acceptable. If that's you, you're not in this conversation. I wasn't referring to you. I was referring to the over-the-top, I've got to watch all the fantasy shows, I've got to buy all the books, I've got to draft certain people at certain amounts and I won't go above, you know the type. We all know the type. You said you got a new buddy who's a Raiders fan who's a big fantasy football guy. Okay? I'm venturing to guess, just based off of the people that you hang out with, Eric, he's not one of those types I was just describing.
No, he's not. Him and I actually, we work together, and we actually talk football pretty much all the time. Like, he knows that I was picking Bears and Colts.
Yeah.
And we even told a couple other people. And it was funny because I emailed him because I needed his number because I was going to send out a text about, my fantasy draft tonight. And he's like, and he emailed me back. He's like, wow, who would have thought? I said, yeah, there goes my Bears Colts prediction. And that's all that was.
Yeah.
It's not like, oh, well, yeah, my whole draft is ruined or anything like that. Nothing like that. But, I mean, yeah, he's a Raider fan. He also likes the Bears. So,
and
he's well-rounded in football.
And to piggyback off that, he's a big-time fantasy football player, right?
He is, yeah.
Okay. So, again, somebody like that I'm not talking about. I just want that to be clear, because I know I'm going to piss off a lot of our fans and some people that follow us.
There's a difference. There's a difference. And let me use myself as an example. I'm in 4 or 5 leagues. A couple of them are money leagues. A couple of them are just for fun. A couple of them are obviously ones that I've been in a long time, and I like to keep doing it because all my leagues are different. However, if you're going to be that guy who, because Brian Westbrook decided to stop on the 1-yard line, and you're going to yell profanities at him and tweet at him saying, "Oh, you totally lost my game for me," blah blah blah. Yeah, you're that type of fantasy football player. Nobody wants to hang around with. If you're that guy who tweets out to somebody or Facebooks to somebody, "Oh, you do an interception, you cost me a title." Guess what? It's not for you. You need to take a step back and reevaluate your life.
Yeah.
If you want to have good camaraderie, like you said, have fun, a little ribbing, get beat by 100 points by the line of defense. Hey, fantasy football is for you.
Yeah. Shut up, Eric. Shut up. Look. I'm gonna say something here too, because this applies to me too. So 2 years ago, I lost in the championship game on the last play of the last regular season game on Monday night.
Man, yeah, you did.
Okay, so earlier in the year, I had lost a game because Todd Gurley ran and stopped at the 1-yard line against the Green Bay Packers to preserve the win. Okay, I was not upset. I was jumping up and down for joy because it was the right call and the Rams had just sealed the game. And I was dancing a jig, okay, because I knew at the very least they were going to get a field goal, okay? Actually, no, that was it. That ended the game. It wasn't against the Packers. I forget who it was against. But he did against somebody, and it won him the game. The game was over. And my hands went up in the air, and I celebrated, and I was excited because it was the right decision, okay?
Because your fandom for the team comes first.
Exactly. Now, how did I lose that fantasy championship? I'm up by 6. The Raiders have I'm up by 6. The Raiders have the ball. Actually, I'm up by 8, aren't I? Because it ended up going to bench points. I'm up by 8. The Raiders have the ball. They have no chance to win the game. No chance to win the game. It's like 16-3. Or 16-6. It's not a one-score game. And I remember thinking, just don't do that stupid lateral bull crap. Just don't do it. What do the Raiders do? They do that stupid lateral bull crap. The Eagles pick up the fumble, 2 points for my buddy that I'm going against, scoops, and scores a touchdown. 6 more points for my buddy for a total of 8. Well, I was playing the championship game without a kicker. Don't ask. Sometimes I make dumb decisions through the course of the season that come back and bite me. Zerline was out with an injury and I didn't have a backup. So my bench was significantly lower than his bench. But I had 115 and he had 108, 107, whatever it is. I had the game won. He scores. It's tied. Our tie-breaking rules are the fairest it can be. I love how our tie-breaking works in our league because in our league, if you tie it in the score, then the bench points determines the winner. Whoever has the most points on the bench. So your bench matters in our league, and I think it's the best way to play. So what ended up happening? His bench was higher. I think he had 46, and I had like 16 or 12 or some crazy number. It was a blowout on the bench, and I just didn't want it to go to the bench. That's how I lost my championship money. Did I turn around and go on Twitter and try to find David Carr and be like, "You piece of crap, you cost me the championship"? No. I called Eric, and we started laughing. That's what you do. Because again, that's the kind of fantasy football player I am. That's the kind of fantasy football player I like, I can stomach. Some of them are still a little bit crazy for me, but we're all on the same team. There's another category of fantasy football players that I don't like. And those are the ones I'm talking about. Closing points, Eric, before we're done?
No, I think you hit everything and anything with luck with fantasy. You know, it sucks that he retired, but he's gonna do what's best for him, his health, his family.
Yep.
And you know, he is set as far as financially. So all the best to Andrew, and I won't be surprised if he joins his dad in some capacity in the XFL when his contract is over. Not playing, but somewhere in the front office if he doesn't have a front office job with the Colts.
You know what I hope?
If he wants to be there.
Here's what I hope. I hope he becomes a head coach one day in the XFL. I'm with you. I just best of luck to you, Andrew. I hope you and your family have a wonderful life. Thank you for all that you gave the sport. I'm not a Colts fan, but let me rephrase that. I liked the Colts when they had Dickerson. I hated the Colts when they had Peyton Manning. I loved the Colts when they had Andrew Luck. So, on behalf of the Ramily, I just want to say thank you for all that you did. We love you. We're going to miss you, but the show will go on without you, and I hope you and your family the best. I wish you and your family the best of luck, and I hope that you find what makes you happy and that you can get through this difficult time. And I'm sorry that some Colt fans booed you, but I will also speak for the Colt fans. I don't think they all feel that way. I think they're saddened today, but I know they appreciate everything you gave them. With that being said, I'm Anthony.
I'm Eric.
Horns up.
Horseshoes on the side for you, Andrew.
Yeah, hey, I like that. I like that. Go,
Bear down.
Yeah, go Rams. Go Rams.
Go Bears.
And you know what? Go Colts. Even though they're not going to win it this year. Sorry, guys.